Hello, my name is Sarah Jones, and this is my research project for my English 2030 Critical Reading and Writing class final. The research project I chose to do was about mental health. My topic of mental health was based upon how aware people are, the prevalence of mental health, how we can help, and why numbers have risen so high lately. Mental health problems are definitely on the rise. My questions were, what is causing this, and how can we help? How much awareness is there for mental health? Do people know the statistics of mental health problems? How much do they know about mental illnesses themselves? How much support is there for mental health in comparison to other health problems? In order to figure out this, I administered surveys and interviews, and the results included data and opinions on mental health from both people that possess a mental illness and those who didn't know much about them. Mental illnesses have risen drastically over the last 10 years. 1 in 5 adults are diagnosed with a mental health problem. 8.2% of teens are suffering from severe depression as of 2015, and 76% of all those who are diagnosed with a mental illness do not receive treatment. Millions of people are left to suffer with an illness that affects their brains and emotions rather than their physical being, which means that there's several people that you know in your life that are probably suffering from a mental illness, but you can't tell because it doesn't affect them physically. Suicide rates have increased exponentially over the last 10 years, and testimonies state it's because they felt no one understood what they were going through. My research delved into awareness and how actual people with mental health problems felt that they could help the numbers drop. I started my research with articles on the internet. I found statistics on diagnosis and treatment of mental illnesses. I also found scholarly articles from professionals who studied mental health as their primary subject. I also found opinions from people who have mental illnesses, who believe that there is not enough awareness for their mental condition. My reference source was using a student's dictionary defining illness, which is a sickness, ailment, or disease. Mental illnesses are still as serious as other illnesses, as they also fall under this definition. My thesis was that there is not enough support and thought towards victims of mental illness, and that this could be the main reason that statistics have grown so greatly over the last 20 years. The more research I did, the more I developed my argument in favor of awareness being the key to help mental health problems. Primary research was the greatest contribution towards my conclusion. I used surveys and personal interviews for my primary research. My first use of primary research was for surveys. The surveys I administered went to both those with experience with mental health problems and those without. The results were as expected, with those with experience answering with more detail and knowledge than those who did not know anything. 80% of the people who took my survey ended up having a form of mental illness themselves, and those who did not have one themselves at least knew someone who did. Questions ranged from multiple choice to answering with their own words. An example was defining mental illness with their own words. 2 different answers. One said depression and anxiety, and another said an illness not easily recognizable in the traditional sense, an illness that is emotionally based and not physically. These 2 different answers came from one person without experience with mental illness and somebody who is, and it's pretty easy to tell which answer came from which. Another example of a question was, do you think enough support is given towards mental health? 100% of the people on my survey answered no. Another example was, which age group do you believe is most affected by mental health? 90% answered teens and 10% answered young adults, keeping the range in the younger generation. My second form of primary research came from my interviews. I conducted 5 personal interviews, and I kept their identities anonymous. I found these 5 individuals by adding a question at the bottom of my survey asking if they would be willing to participate in an email interview with me. I had to conduct my interviews over email because one of the individuals who agreed to participate in the survey lived in another state all the way across the country. My questions were looking mostly for opinions. The questions were the same for each group. What do you think is causing the rise in mental illness? What do you think is the best way to help? Why did you select the age group you thought was most affected by mental health problems? I also asked for more of their personal opinions on the topic. The individuals participating in the interview were in agreement that support and spreading awareness is the best solution to helping victims of mental illness. They each said younger age groups are affected to mental illness because of stress from expectations from adults and the lack of understanding from older people. One individual referenced all the shootings that have occurred recently and stated that fear of what society has come to could also be playing a part in the rise of mental illness. My conclusion. My thesis was that there is not enough support for mental health, and that is causing the rise in the number of those diagnosed with a mental illness. Through the research I conducted, I conclude that this thesis turned out to be true. Professional researchers agree, and along with the primary research and first-hand interviews that I took, they also agreed. The best way to spread support for mental health victims is to spread awareness. There are organizations dedicated to mental health, and they accept donations, or even just spreading the word about these organizations helps show support. Through this project, I both learned more on this topic and helped spread word of mental health to others. Understanding how serious this issue has gotten and will continue to get without help is very important. If the younger generations are suffering from mental health problems and no one supports them, how will that affect the future of the world? Here's my bibliography page, including my reference source, my primary articles that I used, and my scholarly articles. Thank you for watching my presentation on mental health.